And to have the best seats in the synagogues and places of honor and banquets. They devour widows' houses, and for the sake of appearance, say long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. He sat down opposite the treasury and watched the crowd putting money into the treasury. And many rich children put in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which are worth a penny. And then he called his disciples and he said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all that she had to live on." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Jade and Jasmine, did you go down to Monroe Park? Yeah? You can go back with them too, because they want you to talk to our little kids, okay? Acolytes aren't used to leading during the middle of the service. Understandably. This is one of those texts that is often reserved for Stewardship Sunday. Aren't we lucky we had it last week? Because there's a lot of guilt going on in this one, and I recall the story of the pastor who decided, this is the one to use for stewardship. And before you entered the church, you had 2 big posters. And one of the posters had a bunch of very wealthy people dumping a lot of money into a big plate. And the other one had the poor widow putting in the 2 copper coins. And in between was a sign that said, "Which one are you?" Well, it didn't work all that well. You see, sometimes guilt works and sometimes it doesn't. What it simply did, got the parishioners a little upset and angry. Giving that year was down 30%, and they took 30% out of the pastor's salary. We're making them feel so darn guilty, you know. You can't get away with that type of stuff. And if you do, you really are missing the whole context of what is going on here. Because as you look at the text at the end where Jesus says, well, yes, they gave out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put in everything she had, all that she had to live on for that day. In other words, on that day, she gave what she had. It doesn't say that what she did is literally put herself into starvation. She just felt moved at that point, on that day, to be wholly the person she was called to be, on that day. And I was thinking about this, and I have to revamp everything now that the kids have gone down to Monroe Park. And after Ron Diamond showed me pictures that he had taken of the long line of people who are lined up to eat chili on a Sunday morning. Not exactly what most of us eat, but it's warm. And I began to think about those people who were lined up on a Sunday morning, on a crisp Sunday morning, and it's only going to get colder, of course. And we call them the poor. And the problem there is it's a very singular label, isn't it? We are not looking at the whole person. like the poor widow here who gives everything she had to live on, what they give up in that morning, lining up on a Sunday morning for chili, is to give up any sense of real identity other than the fact that they are poor. And so as a result, when we look at this text today, it's not so much that we say, we are the rich ones, we are the ones with the money. We're not the poor widow with the 2 copper coins. Rather, what we're called to do, I think more than anything, is to say, who are you as a complete person right here and right now? Those people who lined up for food knew who they were. They were the hungry. They were the ones out in the cold. They are the ones that put their pride in their pocket and simply say, if I gotta eat, this is the only way I'm going to eat. And so we send our kids out there to learn what it is to really reach out and be someone who feeds the poor. And when we do that, what we do for them that day, just like the widow who lived that one day giving away the 2 pennies, we want our kids to get out there and say, on this day here and now, who are you? And that's what we're really looking for. We're not how much money you have or don't have, but the whole idea behind this scripture is to say to ourselves, who are we as a whole person at any given moment, given the fact that we are the people who say that Christ is our Redeemer, our Sanctifier. So the thing is difficult because when we walk in tomorrow, we're walking out of church and we're missing all of this stuff. The things that make us feel like we are in church, right? And we're missing the anthems that are beautiful and the organ. We're missing the prayers, the bread and the wine, because Monday is so radically different than what we're doing here. But how do we get what we're saying, who we are right now, over into the next day? How does that live in our lives? What are the reminders that we need throughout the week? What around your house reminds you of who you are right there at that moment? Right there on the spot that simply says, I am a person who somehow has been called by God to think differently than the rest of the world. And if I'm going to feed the poor, am I feeding just poor, or am I feeding really God's children? And sometimes that's not easy to do because the poor aren't always the kind of appreciative God's children we would like them to be. Sometimes they can be downright ornery. But hunger does that type of thing. And after a while, you may get sick and tired of having to beg. You may not like the situation that you're in. You may even want to rebel against it, but you have no choice because you're hungry. And so you put up with these things, and all of a sudden, who you are simply is thrown down into one word. You are poor. And over against that, we are the other side that might say, but we are the rich. But even that's not enough, because you can't rely upon that, because the world likes to say, you made it. Lucky, lucky you. Now let's get you feeling guilty so you'll go out and feed the poor, until they insult you. And that may come. And the difficulty there at that given moment is to simply say, how would I do and how would I feel where if I'm in the opposite situation, if I was standing in that long line? When he called his disciples, he said to them, truly I'm telling you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury. For them they have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all that she had to live on. Because the real question is, every now and then, we are going to bump into a situation that calls us to drop everything we've got at that moment. It may not be money. It could be time. It could be anything that describes who you are and where you're situated in life. At that moment in time, what do you drop into the treasury? I had that happen to me once. The strangest thing happened. I was driving along and I got a flat tire, so I had to pull over and it was raining. And as I got out, I thought, I gotta change this tire, I'm gonna get soaked. And a wrench had gone straight through the tire. Don't ask me how it happened. When I brought it to the service station, they put it up on the wall as a display. Because they had never seen anything like it before. And as I opened the trunk, a guy came in and he said, I went by you, and I got to the stoplight and I thought, I just can't leave him there. And that was his moment of giving 2 copper pennies It was his time at that moment. He interrupted whatever he had to do, and he came back and he gave me a hand. I was so darn grateful, I can't tell you, because it was boring. But it was at that moment in time where he made that decision to give all that he had at that moment. It doesn't mean all you have to live on. It means at that moment, here and now, what are you going to do when you face that situation? When you've got someone opposite you in need? And that's so varied, isn't it? It has different aspects of where you are, where you teach, out in your business and so on. It's the ability to look at someone and say, does this person need who I am right now? Am I worth the 2 copper coins of giving it over to that person? As little as it may be, I'll give it. It's time for me to do this. The world is filled with interruptions, and sometimes we don't see God in them. But at any given time, that interruption may be the request for the 2 pennies that are in your pocket, to give it now, and to then walk away. Because tomorrow, it may be all different. But that's the great difficulty of living the Christian life, and that is deciphering the moment. Because Jesus used this. Can you see him? He's watching the treasury. This is like a little film clip. I love the way it's being done. He's gazing, and he's watching. And he sees all these other people, and then this woman comes along. And then he goes to the disciples, come here. Take a look at this. Did you see what just happened? Now, let me tell you something about what just happened. He had to describe to them what had happened because it may have been beyond their understanding. But that's the whole beauty of a little story like this. It gives us an insight not just to what he saw, but also what we see in the world ourselves. That moment in time where we have to dig into our pockets and we only find a couple of pennies, but we give it away anyway because that's our moment. In Greek, there's 2 concepts of time. There's chronos, like my watch and so on. And then there's kairos. And kairos is a different type of time. It is the moment. It is that auspicious time where kairos says, jump on it, grab it right now, because it may not come again. It's an opportunity that time and chronos doesn't always give you. Kairos says, take a deep look and see what's going on. And that's what Jesus is doing. He's saying to the disciples, take a deep look, see what's going on right now. And watch this. And as you walk out in life, say to yourself, what are my kairos moments that I'm going to hit this week? And you have to search for them. It takes a little work. It takes a little observation. But my God, it's so worth it. Our kids went down, some of them today, and for the first time, read people standing in a line in the cold. And I don't know what they're thinking, but I hope it was a kairos moment for them. That somehow the world out there is different for sometimes what they live in. And if that kairos moment becomes part of who they are as they grow up, then they become those children that understand truly what a parable is about, what sacrifice is about, what love is about, what neighborhood is about. Because all of a sudden, who is my neighbor? Sometimes your neighbor becomes instantaneously standing right next to you in the grocery line, out in the parking lot, anywhere where you see another human being and you say, what am I seeing right now? And it calls us to be very observant people. He said, beware of the scribes who like to walk around on long robes, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplace, and to have the best seats in the synagogue, places of honor, and banquets. For the sake of appearance, they say long prayers, or sometimes long sermons. But there's a hypocrisy to that whole thing, isn't there? Because sooner or later we have to face the reflection of who we really are. And if there's anything to be said, it should be that hopefully the grace of God will help us grab the kairos moments of our lives. And at that moment, simply be the people that God calls us to be. Not for our own sake, but when you do it for someone else, you oftentimes find out who you really are, don't you? That is what it means to be a giving person. So, I think we had a moment in time, hopefully a kairos moment for our young people in our church this morning. And if you want to pray for them, pray that they'll carry this around in their memories. So the next time they see a poor person, they don't see a poor person. Possibly they may even see the face of Christ. The one that they hear about all the time in Sunday school and here at church and what we sing about, but suddenly it becomes a reality in their lives. But the suffering Christ goes on today in the lives of people who stand up in a line in Monroe Park on a Sunday morning to get fed the chili that is given to them. Hopefully, when those people eat, they too will have a kairos moment and will understand that they're more than poor. They have always been the children of God. And they have just been fed by the children